My name is Catherine Sullivan DiCarlo, and I am the Vice President of Admissions and Marketing at Chapel Haven Schleifer Center. And we're really excited to host this webinar today with our partners at the Yale Child Study Center. And you're looking at an artist rendering of our new campus. And the funny thing is that it really does look like that. And so we encourage you to check us out. Chapel Haven is a nonprofit, and Dr. Joe and I were talking earlier that both our organizations have been around. We were founded in 1972, and the Yale Child Study Center as well was chugging along at that time. And we serve adults with a wide range of profiles. And our focus and our mission is to help people gain independence and to be able to live for a lifetime as an adult with a self-empowered, productive life. So, and we've had many collaborations with the Yale Child Study Center over the years. I do want to give them a shout out for, with the help of Dr. Volkmar and Dr. Ami Klin, helping us to create our Asperger Syndrome Adult Transition Program. That is one of the programs that we offer. As well, Dr. Joe is a child psychiatrist at the Yale Child Study Center whose main area and passion is autism. And over the years, he has seen and counseled many adults at Chapel Haven with autism. And he's also has delved into research and community events around autism and around this groundbreaking study. And just one final thing, we are doing virtual open houses, which are nice and easy. You can tune in from your living room, and you can also bring your young adult online to see what we're all about. So our next one will be on Wednesday, November 11th at 5:30 Eastern Standard Time. And you can email me at cdecarlo@chapelhaven.org, and I can help you get registered for that. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Joe.
All right, great. Okay, so yeah, like Catherine said, I do a number of things at the Child Study Center. Mainly, I was doing a lot of patient care, doing less of that now, but doing a lot more of the research end of it, and certainly a lot of the community building end of it. So Project Casey, people probably recognize me for my work in the community via Project Casey. Which, it's still on and strong. But what people don't usually hear about is some of the research that we do here. So one of the main projects that I'm working on is something called SPARK. SPARK stands for Simons Foundation Powering Autism Research. And it is just a real quick overview. It is a sort of multi-site research study that's happening across 20 plus sites across the United States, looking for participants, particularly families that have a person with autism and both biological parents, although anyone on the spectrum can participate. And it studies a bunch of things. One of the things is, learning about autism genetics, and then how those genetics can then be used to answer clinical questions that improve lives for folks who are on the spectrum. So let me jump in here. I'd like to start out with this slide, because a lot of research, is about, okay, we want people to help science, but I think it's also very important is, what's in it for families, so unlike a lot of other research studies, which are kind of one and done. You go in there, you do what you need to do, and then they may give you some kind of a stipend, but then after that it's over. SPARK is actually in addition to research, there's a big community component. So when people are part of SPARK, they actually join a nationwide community. So it totals, you can see that the numbers are pretty impressive. So 90,779 individuals with autism. The goal of SPARK is to enhance knowledge. Researchers across the nation, so Autism Research, that are vetted by the Simons Foundation, have access to de-identified SPARK participant data. and they'll be able to contact you if you want. It's all sort of voluntary, and you can control if you want to get contacted or not, and to see if your family would benefit for any particular study. With Spark, people can receive a gift card from Amazon valued up to $50, and this is one gift card per family. When you're part of the Spark community, you're also updated with like the most recent findings. So it's sort of gives you feedback. So unlike a lot of studies, when you sort of do them and you're done, you don't really hear anything about it. When you're part of the Spark community, the research that you participate in, you get feedback on the outcomes of those research projects and all the others that they're doing. And there's also a possibility to receive sort of a genetic diagnosis. Since Spark does involve a collection of saliva samples for the genetic study, some families will receive results of a genetic diagnosis, but not all of them, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. You also get personalized reports. So when you complete surveys, Spark will sort of give you feedback, on how your responses lined up with other folks who participated. So it's a nice way to sort of calibrate, where you are compared to the rest of the population. So those are some of the benefits of Spark. So let me just go through a brief overview of Spark, and starting with a very simple question: what is scientific research and what is Spark? So research is really, at most basic, a learning process and a sharing process. And people ask questions, and it takes time to answer those questions. But to answer questions, you need data, and lots of data. And the more data you have, the more likely you're able to draw conclusions that might apply to populations of people. And then those data are shared back to people, and professionals and community members, who are then able to use that knowledge, to make decisions that make living better. So for Spark's research, the data collection is through two ways. There's sort of the saliva samples, which is used for DNA analysis, but then that's paired with the completing these online surveys. So one thing to remember about Spark is that it's all done from home if you want. So you never have to leave your house. A lot of this is done online and through the mail. So saliva samples in the mail, survey questions online. So those are the two main data sources that Spark uses for research. And I should emphasize that research, historically, it's been more of a one-sided ordeal. As had the scientists and the physicians, asking the questions, and then the community members asking them to volunteer and participate. Spark is a little different in that respect, is that it actively solicits feedback from community, and in that process, the community members can actually influence the direction of research, and have a better contribution to the research, and to make sure that it actually is answering questions that are important to them. Okay, so what is Spark? Mission is pretty simple: speed up autism research and understanding of autism. Ultimately, we're all in it to improve lives. The goal of Spark is to recruit and engage about 50,000 trios. So what that means is not just have people participate now, but have people part of this community for ongoing collaboration and research. And what a trio is defined as a person on the autism spectrum and both their biological parents. As I said earlier, if a person with autism by himself or herself wants to participate, or if just one parent is available, that's totally fine too. Families enroll online. They share the medical and behavioral information through surveys, and the DNA sample through a saliva tube that's mailed to your home. All right, so how does it speed up autism research? So, one of the things that we found out over the decades of researching autism is, how very different people are who are on the autism spectrum. So I love Stephen Shore's quote that you met one person with autism, you met one person with autism. Very true. So that's wonderful, for sort of society, because everyone has a unique contribution. For research, it's a little trickier, because if in research, you want to be able to have people who are as similar as possible, and then be able to use that information to predict something about that group of people who have these similarities, right? If you just use autism, which is very broad, you're going to have people who are very, very different with each other, contributing to findings which may not apply to people in other autism groups. So what happens here is you're using both the genetic data and sort of the phenotypic data, which are sort of outwardly observable traits, to cluster people into groups, and then look at the data within that group to predict something that will sort of benefit that group. So what you're doing is you're stratifying people based on a reliable similarity, so that the results they produce you'll know are applicable to that group. If you try to do that, it's like apples and oranges. You wouldn't mix apples and oranges together in something to then make a prediction about apples and then oranges. You would want to separate the apples and oranges out, and what you find with oranges applies to oranges, and what you find with apples applies to apples. So that's a very, very simplified analogy. All right, one thing to clarify is that, no, we're not looking for a cure for autism. That's one common misconception that I hear. And there's not any plans for a genetic test. So obviously if you're researching genetics, data could be used to inform such tests, but that's really not the purpose of Spark. And also, as many as 10% of folks get a report of whatever finding they may have that links their autism to their genetics. So it's 10% right now, but this may increase over time as more autism genes are identified. All right, so one concern that I also hear about with Spark is that how secure is it? I mean, understandably, this is different than, say, hopping into an MRI machine and having a brain image done of you. This is, genetic results. So you want to make sure, and this is like highly personal information, through these surveys. So you want to really make sure that the information is safe, So, and with something like this, it's taken very, very seriously. So as soon as data are collected, they're encrypted. So they're basically turned into a code which is undecipherable unless you have a key to crack the code. Then all the data are actually stripped of any personally identifiable information. So you can see this image here that has a picture of a person. That picture, all that personal information is removed from that data set, and it's swapped out with a random number, right? So even if what people see, what researchers would see, is data that corresponds to a random number, and they wouldn't be able to link it back to an individual person. And it's not a free-for-all also. So, there's a lot of people who are doing some work in autism that are probably, controversial. Not anyone can just access this data, and use it for research. They have to, be vetted by the foundation, and they have to have a valid purpose that's going to be meaningful, to the population. There's also something called a certificate of confidentiality, which protects release of data to non-researchers without the participants' informed consent. And finally, Spark will inform patients of research studies they want to participate in. So based on what you complete in the questionnaire, it will identify studies that may fit kinds of things that you're interested in, and it will ask you if you want to participate. All right, so what has Spark learned? So that's how your data is protected, and this is what some of the fruits that has come out of this so far. It's certainly clarified, sort of the environmental and genetic aspects of ASD. So based on this large data set, it's pretty clear that there's a significant genetic component with Spark. Certainly from these numbers, you can tell that with the more genetics that's shared, the more likely a sibling might have ASD. So there's a 77% concordance rate with identical twins. So genetically identical twins will have both have a diagnosis of autism in 77% of cases. Fraternal twins, that number goes down to 31%. And then if they're siblings, then it's 20%. So certainly in, I would say about sort of the population average is about like 2%. So you can see that as you're related, it sort of increases. So certainly a genetic component to it. This is a nice picture because it sort of conveys the different factors that could be involved with autism. So sort of on the left side here, you see genetic factors can be inherited or de novo. So inherited, what this means is something that's clearly passed down from parent to child. De novo changes are things that happen sort of that aren't passed down, but happen in the process between, say, the gamete formation and conception. But that's not enough. There's also sort of environmental contributors on the right side here. These are some things that have been suspected to contribute to autism. All of these things, create these environmental factors, and when they overlap with the genetic factors, then someone may have autism. So a lot of this stuff is based on, these very large, population studies, that you can do with sort of online research communities like Spark. All right, this just goes to the difference between Denovo changes and things that are heritable. So Denovo simply means that it wasn't present in biological parents, but somewhere in the process, whether the genetic change occurs from the eggs or sperm duplications or after fertilization, you can have genetic changes. And genetic changes or these de novo changes are pretty common in everyone. I think we all pretty much have them somewhere, but since the genome is so huge, a lot of times we don't really, there's really no observable outcome of them. Now in autism, it's thought through, the data that Spark has gathered that 20 to 30% of individuals have these de novo changes. So that sort of explains why when we do evaluations, we ask people, hey, is there any family history? Does anyone else on the spectrum have in the family have autism? A lot of times, you'll say no. There's no history of it at all. And that could be, a lot of it could be due to these de novo changes. All right, so this just is sort of a brief video on how quickly the Spark study has been progressing in the United States. If I can get it to work. It doesn't really want to work. Anyways, so basically, we have a lot of people across the country participating in Spark. And it's a growing number. So initial studies have taught us that there's identified 27 new genes linked to autism. De novo changes account for 20 to 30% of the autism genetic risk. The research suggests there are hundreds more that are out there, and that is the reasons why we need so many more people to participate in the study. Now, returning genetic results, so that is one strong reason why some folks will want to participate in Spark, is that there's a possibility to get a genetic result. So this gene list, called the Spark gene list, is a compilation of about 153 genes and copy number variants, that are thought to be associated with autism. So this is based on that large number of people that have participated so far. So what happens is that the committee reviews results and approves genes that are linked to autism. And then if there's a match from anybody who's in the participant pool for that gene or that genetic change, then the family will get a report documenting that change, what it means. In addition to that, there will also be genetic counseling provided by Spark so that families understand what these results mean. One thing to remember, though, is that it's not a clinical genetic test like you would go to Quest Labs to get. This is focused more on autism research. So since we don't know what all the genes are, you can't really give people negative results because it could be negative because it hasn't been discovered yet. So that's why it's about 10% right now. That number can grow over time as new genes are discovered. And when they're discovered, then you will be notified if it matches one of those identified genes. But the cool thing is you don't even have to be notified if you don't want. And some people, they could really care less about what their genetics say, but maybe they want to participate, want to help science, or maybe they want to participate in other aspects of autism research that Spark can offer. So part of the consent, and one thing you'll notice when you sign up for Spark is there's a lot of language around like how your day is going to be used and what you want to do, with the results. So this is one example that gives people the option to either receive results related to autism or not. So you can participate and never have to hear anything about genetic results if you don't want to. Now, one thing that they do is, they do screen for genetic issues that could be potentially life-saving. So in addition to just autism that they're looking for, there are certain genetic changes that, there is a responsibility to notify people because they can change, how the decisions they make on their healthcare potentially, save their lives. So it even gives you the option to opt out of that. So if you don't want to know anything related to genetics, you can opt out of both of those things, if you care less about the autism part. But yeah, it'd be nice to know if I had some sort of genetic condition that I should know about now so I can really plan for it. Then, you can opt in for that. So there's some flexibility here. This is an example of a guide that is prepared and distributed to families. If there is a genetic condition identified, the specific guide is related to the FOXP1 syndrome. So you can see the language is very user-friendly. There's a lot of visuals. It's not heavy in jargon. There's a lot of more practical information about the condition that's accessible to people in the community and their family members. All right, so what does Spark give back? So in addition to the potential for genetic results, there's also feedback on the surveys that are completed if you choose to participate in them. These are some summary statistics. So these are things that you might see that are the results of people participating in the various Spark surveys that are out there. And it's just interesting to see, how your information or how your experience sort of aligns with the rest of the folks, who are also living with autism. So there's this. And also, there's that feedback that I mentioned as well. So when surveys are closed, when you complete a survey and when it's closed, you'll be able to receive the results to see how you compare to other folks. And this is all part of this process of sort of refining research. so that it helps communities. So this is shows a cycle here of Spark here at the top, notifying participants about research studies. Participants decide whether they want to participate. The studies lead to new information. New information is then used by Spark to then design other research studies based on the findings or based on the results that people have reported back on. So this process then helps refine the kind of questions, refine the quality of the data, so that it's a constant cycle of improvement. So the kind of research you do, the quality of the data, is something that is reflective of the communities and also something that the communities want.
So Dr. Joe, we had talked about a half hour.
Oh, we have.
And we have about 3 more minutes. I mean, we could certainly all hang on and chat with people, but I just wanted to give you that little time.
Actually, I think I'm almost done.
Okay. And also, if there's a way that people can contact you, we probably should put that in the chat, or maybe it's on your slide.
It's actually the last slide, and I'm going to get to that. We'll do the last of it in 1 minute. So,
okay.
So researchers, so as I was saying below, there's data, but you have to apply to get the data. There's a review committee, that studies have to go through in order to be included in Spark. And this is an example of the kinds of things that are studied. So very applicable things, to everyday life. And on the right, there's an example of an email that you might get for an invitation. This is just sort of the repeat of, what is in it for families. And I'll just say, sort of again, it's joining community, but it's also sort of being in the process of participating, in research that benefits the family. So if you think about, if you want something to influence or to benefit you, then it's really important to be part of the process. All right, so this is our contact info. If you have any questions, you can contact us here, or if you have any questions now, happy to answer them.